This segment is sponsored by Our Home Magazine.
It's always special when Virginia this morning can go on the road. Didn't have to go very far down 64 to Williamsburg, and a very special, beautiful place. This lovely lady is Liza Gutzler. And tell us, Liza, where are we? I mean, what is the name of this amazing place?
Well, this is an amazing museum. You're in the DeWitt Wallace Decorative Arts Museum, Bill. It's part of the Art Museums of Colonial Williamsburg, which also include our Abbey Aldrich Rockefeller Folk Art Museum, all under one roof. We're showing off all kinds of great 18th century things here.
Well, you know, as a Virginian, we all know the story of Williamsburg. And then, of course, in the 1930s, there was the restoration of Williamsburg. And then, all of a sudden, there was this interest in fashions from Williamsburg because the aristocrats that lived in Williamsburg set the tone for fashion then. It happened again in the 30s, and it's been going ever since.
Well, actually, the products program of Williamsburg, we invented museum home furnishing licensing, and it was the idea of our benefactor, John D. Rockefeller Jr., great businessman, and he heard people saying, wow, love the restoration of Williamsburg. Is there something I can take home? So we started reproducing artifacts in the collection. And that was what Williamsburg really owned, that traditional, that world of reproductions for 50 years. And what we'll be talking about more today is how we've evolved from there into still using the great bones of 18th century design, but creating things that are more casual and relaxed for today's.
Fashion is not static. It keeps moving
absolutely
all the
not.
time. So we're going to start with this beautiful tray back here. And if you've been to Williamsburg, you've been to the Duke of Gloucester Street. Is this a Duke of Gloucester tray, or what?
Well, you're exactly right. Duke of Gloucester is a title that goes down in the royal family. And this particular one was made for King George III's brother, King George III, that we rebelled against. And as you can imagine, he was one of the wealthiest patrons. So Colonial Williamsburg is very lucky to have this circa 1780 dish that was part of a huge service that he had made for very fancy dinner parties. And we with the Mataheta Company, have made some beautiful exact reproductions of this and then taken it into whole dinner services so people can eat in the style of the Duke of Gloucester if they'd like to. And that's a good example of pure reproduction.
What's the next generation now that we're taking this now?
Right. Well, the next generation might be something more interpretive, where, as I said, we'll take the essence of a design and change the medium, change the scale, change the color. And maybe the best example would be the amazing iron stove that Lord Botetourt, the next to last royal governor, had commissioned in London in 1770 to give to the House of Burgesses. It actually moved to the Capitol in Richmond when the Capitol moved there in 1780. And the crown at the top of that stove, our licensee Robert Abbey used as the inspiration for what they call the coronet chandelier. So you change the medium from iron to brass, you add crystals, sparkles, and it looks very different.
Okay, so this is taking something and that's inspiring something else. Like you said, it'd be a total different medium.
Right.
And we're seeing that throughout what we're looking at today.
Absolutely.
All right, so next, what would be the next thing we'll talk about?
Well, one of the things that would have been incredibly fashionable in Williamsburg in the 1770s was a new kind of fabric that was called, in England, copperplate printed fabric. In other words, printing on fabric just as you would on paper. The French call it toile, and today that's the term that most decorators and homemakers know that term. And so we have some examples in our British Textiles exhibit of British copperplate printing. It was sort of the new thing. You'd be very fashionable if you had an expensive copperplate printed bed or a gown. And we've used that on some dishes with Cascada. And they take a toile pattern, transfer print it onto the dishes, use it in a very different way, but also using a technology that was done in the 18th century because they used transfer printing on dishes in the 1770s.
Wow. So then we go to the next thing, and what is that?
Well, we have a license with the World Art Group, which is headquartered in Richmond, and they do prints of a number of things that are in our rare book library, in our collection, in some instances, some things here in the museum. And we have a new exhibit we've just opened called British Masterworks, which has one of my favorite things in the collection, and it's a London-made Delft tile picture. The World Art Group did an exact scale print of it, and they glazed it in a way that the print looks like it's tiles. So you can have this masterwork, Bill, at your house if you'd like.
This is so interesting to take a look at this, and folks are going to see this in Our Home magazine. They're going to get some great examples of this, but we wanted to come take a look. Do you have a favorite thing that's been kind of changed, a total different medium? Do you have one? Is that like asking a mom to pick her favorite child?
Well, it's not actually, because one of the very first product that Robert Abbey, our lighting company, or one of our lighting companies, made for us are some lamps that we call Ming, and they were actually inspired by Dutch Delft tulip pagodas that are here in this gallery, Revolution in Taste, from the late 17th century during the era of tulipomania, when it would have been very expensive to have tulip bulbs. And the way they took these blue and white pagodas that are about this tall and translated them into crystal and a brass lamp that's very streamlined and elegant, I just think it was a fun transformation, and they're one of my favorite products.
Thank you for taking time with us.
My pleasure.
We're going to go back to Virginia this morning.
What a fun visit. Find Our Home magazine on newsstands today or subscribe at richmondmagazine.com/home. You'll find them on Facebook at Our Home Magazine or on Instagram at Our Home Mag. That's fantastic. Featured in the current issue there, so be sure to pick that one up.
A lot of fun.
A lot of neat
That was
design.
a beautiful place.
Yeah, a lot of great inspiration.